And I think we're very, very good at deflecting, at distracting. We have very legal numbing techniques on sale in every store imaginable
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
helps us to detach and ignore our feelings. And I had a lady on my training years ago, and she said she grew up saying, I'll fix it later, I'll fix it later, I'll fix it later. And then eventually she was like, and here I am now trying to fix it, at 60 something with a huge backpack full of stuff she said she'd try and fix later because she just, a survival tactic is just to put your one foot in front of the other and keep going and compartmentalize that experience into like a black hole or a black box. I see that eventually is going to catch up with you. This something is going to cause a rift or a jolt in your life, make you open that Pandora's box. Because if there's only so much you can take. Think of this as just an energy in a bottle, and you're shoving all this energy down, shove, 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 ignore, ignore. And then there's a capacity, there's a limit to this bottle, this container. Then what happens? It explodes, or it breaks out, or there's illness, or there's a rift, or there's a breakdown, or there's, yes, severe disruption because the energy needs somewhere to go.
Sarah Tobin, welcome to the Inner Entrepreneur podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
I'm delighted to chat to you. I've stumbled across EFT and tapping over many years, but I've never delved into what it actually is. So I'm coming from a place of ignorance. I know very little about it. Probably the most research I've done is just preparing for this interview. So you're talking to an absolute novice, but then I'm also thinking that based on the audience for this podcast, I'm guessing very few of them have any idea what EFT is, and very few have any idea what tapping is. So when you are talking to absolute beginners, how do you explain what it is you do?
Sure. So EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Technique. And tapping is a kind of a colloquial term. So they're one and the same thing, really. Sometimes I say EFT tapping, just to be a bit clearer.
Mm.
And when we go back to the root, Emotional Freedom Technique is a self-administered tool, which means you physically tap on parts of the body that help you de-stress, help you switch off your fight, flight, freeze response so that you can come back to a state of neutrality, if not maybe even positivity. So that's really, really high level. It's a self-administered tool that brings you to a place of calm or peace or grounded neutrality. And what it's actually doing is we're tapping physically using our own hands, tapping on key parts of our bodies that are rooted in ancient Chinese wisdom. This is stuff that has been around for 5,000 years. And we see it in the modality like acupuncture and acupressure. They're the same. It's the same kind of energy. We're working with the meridians in the body, which are basically lines of energy that flow through our body. They deliver messages, they send signals, they work with the vagal nerve, which is our central nervous system. And as we tap on the points, the act of tapping on them, the stimulation of the points themselves, starts to send electromagnetic pulses or signals through those channels, through those meridian channels, which help to release and unblock any stuck energy. So looking at what that energy could be, energy is often felt as emotion or as pain, or can be seen manifested as a behavior or a pattern that we are repeating. So if we work with the emotion and look at what that really is, emotion is energy in motion. And as children, as babies, fresh out of the when we know how to feel, we know how to express, and we know how to let go, don't we? A baby has a feeling, a sensation that it's not comfortable with. It expresses that through crying and later through words, and the help is received most of the time, and they're able to let go and move on. So that is ideally what we do with emotions. We allow ourselves to feel them. We allow ourselves to express them through the throat or the heart or the physical body. Sometimes it's a movement. And then we are able to move on. But what happens in our society, in our cultures today, is that we actually get conditioned to hold on. We get conditioned to give meaning to those uncomfortable situations, and we turn them into beliefs and safety strategies and safety patterns and behaviors that ultimately hold us back. And we can come back to that in a moment, kind of around limiting beliefs. But I'll kind of wrap up the summary now about the tapping, just to make sure that you're on board. Does that all make sense?
That all makes sense. And the image that comes to mind is I was watching a podcast recently, and the speaker wasn't talking about tapping, but he was talking about emotional release, and he gave a beautiful example. He described a in nature video of this young deer being pursued by a lion, and obviously, you know, very unlikely in that situation that the deer is going to escape. But he does, and they have this on camera on one of these. I mean, the video, how they video these things is amazing. Somehow he escapes the line, and once he has escapes to safety, the deer breaks into this uncontrolling shaking and shuddering, absolutely uncontrolling shake, which lasts for, I can't remember. I mean, they didn't show the whole thing in video, but lasts for a couple of minutes. And so the narrative through this was that he'd entered fight or flight because he was under severe danger. But when the danger had passed, then his body began to process it. So the deer surrendered completely to that and got into this state where his body was completely shaking, and it lasted a number of minutes, and then it passed. The energy had passed out of the deer's body. It let it go. It moved on. Um, it was used as an example of how as humans we do the exact opposite. So if we have a traumatic situation, we grasp onto it, we hold it. And a lot of the conversations I've had with people who are in the dealing with emotional challenges sphere, a lot of it seems to me, and I mean the conversations I've had in this podcast around that we don't, in those situations where that energy arises, we don't let it flow. We grasp onto it, we put it away. And then I'm 60 years of age. So after 60 years of doing this, you're carrying a mountain of stored and blocked energy in your body. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I mean, what's happening there is nature in its essence, and we actually, there are certain modalities that replicate that. There's TRE, trauma release exercises, that induce the body's natural shaking process. And
Sorry, I think, to interrupt you, now that you've mentioned that,
that's what it was. Yeah.
I think that's what it was. TRE, yeah.
Yeah. And if you look at different cultures, like in the Polynesians and the Pacific Islands, women in labor shake, and they get up after their baby's born, and they shake with the midwives together to shake off the adrenaline and the cortisol. So that is an extremely natural process. And what we're doing, that's a body process. What we have been taught to do is to use our mind to try and make sense of the experience. So the deer, without the conscious mind of the power of the human mindset, let's say, only knew to process it through the body. But our thinking brain and our egotistical brain and our cultural brain and our patriarchal trained and corporate trained brain wants to make sense of our experience, because we want to try and prevent further painful experiences. So our ego steps in and says, I didn't like that. Let's not have that again. Let's create a strategy that avoids that situation. So let's say I'm unlovable. So if I'm unlovable, I will shut down my heart and I won't be open or vulnerable to further heartbreak. Okay, let's do that. And therefore, we create a myriad of beliefs that become our mindset and the filter with which we perceive the world, which in fact isn't often an accurate interpretation. It's often a false interpretation or misinterpretation, because these are our core beliefs are created between the age of 0 to 7 stroke 8. So at that point, we don't have the capacity or the mental ability to perceive outside of ourselves very far. So we can't understand mums in postnatal depression, dad's lost his job, grandmother is an alcoholic, all these other stuff's happening in the family, it's all chaos. And therefore, we don't understand that there's other things at play, and we make everything personal, which is I think one of the biggest things we should all aim to stop doing, is to taking things personally. And we then perceive the world through that kind of more selfish lens, because our ego's really heightened. We might be hypersensitive to safety. Ultimately, it's a safety strategy, the same strategy that the deer had running away from the lion.
You touched on something that seems like it was really deep there. You said something about the sense that people have the sense that I'm unlovable. That sounds like a very deep emotion, a very deep place for people to go. Do you find that that's a common experience of people, that they are running away of the sense of being unlovable? And how easy is it for us to own up to that?
Honestly, it's one of the most common beliefs that I come across, alongside I'm not worthy and I'm not good enough.
Yeah.
I think the three are very interchangeable and come hand in hand. And they are often based on, to be honest, I have found that they're often based on our own birth experience, because we are actually conscious in the womb. And as we have our birth experience, and if there was any separation from mum around that birth time, i.e., straight after birth, there may have been a premature baby taken to NICU, then the baby perceives abandonment, they perceive rejection, or mum may get sick and have to go back to the hospital, and maybe the baby can't go with her, even maybe if it's a few months old, and the baby perceives abandonment and rejection. And when those experiences happen, when those big rifts happen, the baby is so young, they're not able in any way to make sense of that. So they lock down on what they can make sense of, and they assume, I must be unlovable. There's something wrong with me that has caused this situation, rather than the truth was that everybody was performing life-saving care, to either the mum or to the baby. Now, this can happen at any age. Separation anxiety is huge. Children going to school for the first time can cause big problems. Siblings being born. I have had many clients when the next sibling, that new dynamic causes the feelings of abandonment and rejection as well. And none of this is anybody's fault, is it? It's just what happens. But as a child who's maybe sensitive, maybe more sensitive than others, or maybe isn't getting what they need in terms of the connection, the bond, or the attachment, or the reattachment, if mum's been away and then comes back, then we are going to reaffirm these beliefs. And what happens when we have a core belief of I'm not good enough, I'm unlovable? Unfortunately, our ego sets out to prove our mindset is right. So we will actually subconsciously draw more experiences to us to affirm that that belief is right. How many times have you heard, I told you the world's not a safe
Mm.
place. Or I told you I'm not good at money. I told you I'm not good at maths. I told you I'm this or I'm that. It's because that is what has been played out over and over and over. And with all of my clients, we end up back in those early years, if not birth or even in neutral energy. And it is possible to connect to that because it's an energy that has never left. It's an energy that's still being held on by the body with no memories to attach to it. So before the age of 3, we have no ability to marry or attach an emotion with a memory. You know, often we get a memory and then we go, oh, yeah, and I felt like that, or I feel like that as I think of the memory. Before 3, there's no brain functionality that can do that. So we have these floating energies, just like little clouds of anxiety, clouds of fear, clouds of sadness or grief because of these separations or a certain situation that may have happened in those early years, but we have no way of cognitively understanding it. And that can feel really difficult.
Now you've said there we've no way of cognitively understanding, and obviously these traumas that happen to a very, very young child or a baby, they've no way. But just for my own clarification,
Mm.
do we need to cognitively understand it, or do we just need to somehow heal and release the energy? Because when we bring the mind into into these things, and two simple examples come to my mind, because does everyone carry this trauma? My wife tells a story of when her brother was born, and he's maybe 5 years younger than her. And so it's a long time ago, and you weren't allowed to bring children into the hospital to see the mother. It was very, very difficult. And she remembers standing outside the hospital looking up at her brother, little baby brother, being held at the window. And she remembers crying, seeing, and I mean, she laughs about it now, but she's gonna go, was I crying because I was happy, or was I crying because I was sad? Um, but I suppose, do we need to understand these things, or do we just need to somehow experience or release the trapped emotion?
Yes. Yes.
Because without the emotion, the memory is just a memory.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, the goal really is to detach the emotion from the memory. Like, say you were just removing a layer or a cloud, pulling a cloud out of the memory and allowing that cloud to dissolve and float away. So that when you look back at the memory, it's like, oh, yeah, that happened. And I can talk about really difficult traumatic events because I have processed the emotion that was held based on that event. And actually, what you can do as well is dissolve the belief that was created off the back of it too. So you're right, you don't need to. So often we have pre-verbal or pre-memory emotions. Just connecting to them, feeling them, being aware that they exist, even addressing them with the tapping. So you could say, even though I have this emotion that I think was created before I could speak, I have been holding on to this my whole life, and I'm choosing now to let it go. Okay, so you kind of bring full awareness to it. And really, what tapping does, it brings awareness, it brings compassion, and you witness yourself. You witness yourself. You say,
Yeah.
gosh, I went through that. That was really hard.
Mm.
And it's like just naming it, naming that something existed, naming that there would have been an energy is enough to start the dissolving of it. Because it's what's hidden from us in our shadows that has the huge impact. You know, I don't know if you come across the term shadow work, I'm sure you have, and where we have all these hidden emotions, hidden beliefs, hidden aspects of ourselves because of traumatic or negative experiences that actually tapping helps us to very safely access. So really what tapping is doing is bringing safety to the nervous system. And when you feel safe, it's much easier to connect to the feeling. It's much easier to bring compassion to yourself because you're not, and actually what you're doing too is you're bringing a new perception that you weren't able to see at the time. Because you're able to go now, oh, as an adult, with hindsight, I understand what mum was going through. I understand what dad was going through, and it wasn't my fault. And when you realize that, it's like a gift to your inner child, a gift to that version of you who's stuck in time, frozen in time, that version of you blaming themselves, holding them to something that wasn't their fault. And you start to free yourself, and you dissolve the emotions, and the beliefs that were created also start to dissolve.
I suppose if you look back at the event without maybe addressing the emotion, or as you say, whatever word you used, maybe settling or rebalancing the nervous system, because you hear people often in company and they will talk about a traumatic event, and they'll say, I don't give a shit about it, it doesn't bother me anymore. And you go, okay, your facial expression, your body language, your tone doesn't, I don't give a fuck about that anymore, or whatever. Super kind of, but I mean, that's what people say. I don't care. And it seems to me that that's when people are using the mind to try and deal something. And it's part of the process, but it's a per tool without actually dropping into, what did I feel
Yeah.
at the time? But I think the challenge is for all of us is that we have the mind now as adults to logic go back and go, but yeah, it doesn't matter. I don't care about that. But we don't have the tools to address the hurt that I felt, because the adult looks back and goes, I was 5, I was 3, I was 10, or whatever. I mean, it was stupid. Doesn't matter. I was really hurt by then. I've carried that hurt. And it's like you have to go back in and release that, because otherwise you're going to be stuck there, and maybe your sadness will turn to anger or resentment or something, but you're still stuck there. I think unless you can look at it with love and compassion, both maybe to yourself, I was a small child, or maybe to your parent or whoever it was that may have been the offending party there, and you've a compassionate look, and there's just a completely different energy uh, to that I think the mind by itself doesn't have the ability to take you there.
No, no. We hear the expression, you've got to feel it to heal it.
Yeah.
And really this means coming into the body and honoring what we've been carrying. And I think we're very, very good at deflecting, at distracting. We have very legal numbing techniques on sale in every store imaginable that helps us to detach and ignore our feelings. And I had a lady on my training years ago, she said she grew up saying, I'll fix it later, I'll fix it later, I'll fix it later. And then eventually she was like, and here I am now trying to fix it, at 60 something with a huge backpack full of stuff she said she'd try and fix later, because she just, a survival tactic is just to put your one foot in front of the other and keep going, and compartmentalize that experience into like a black hole or a black box. I see that eventually is going to catch up with you. This something is going to cause a rift or a jolt in your life, make you open that Pandora's box, because if there's only so much you can take. Think of this as just an energy in a bottle, and you're shoving all this energy down, shove, ignore. And then there's a capacity, there's a limit to this bottle, this container. Then what happens? It explodes, or it breaks out, or there's illness, or there's a rift, or there's a breakdown, or there's, severe disruption, because the energy needs somewhere to go.
Yeah, I think sometimes that explosion or that breakdown, um, it it can do the job because people release something, and it may be anger and then they break into tears, and in that emotional depth, they connect with something, and they can heal it. So I think that's possible, but often that can be a very destructive approach
Painful.
as well. So it becomes destructive. You can harm other people. So it's just not a very healthy approach. Um, Tapping to some degree, it kind of, well, I'm thinking of therapy at this
Hmm.
stage, because and I've never been through a tapping session. Maybe I should, but it seems to me like, are you starting off in talk therapy with someone? I mean, are you starting off just in a conversation with someone and trying to see what comes up? So it's almost like normal therapy from that point of view, except that when something comes up, now you're dealing into what this feeling is, and then there's some sort of, I mean, the tapping is obviously just. I mean, I'm thinking, a lot of people listen to this will watch it on YouTube, and other people listen to it driving in the car or something. So maybe you can describe the tapping point of view, from the point of view of someone who's just listening to this.
Yeah,
What actually, what the experience is, what you're actually physically doing.
sure. I think you're right. We start with a conversation. We start with, why do you need support, or what is coming up in your life that, need um, this approach, and so on. And often I deal with people who have had years of therapy, uh, and have not been able to release. They still feel stuck, and they're stuck in the story, because they're telling the story over and over and over, sometimes with different therapists every few years, because they're looking for that shift. And what the shift they're looking for is that emotional release. And when you're just talking about something and just in your head about it, you're not, and you may be connecting to the feeling, but the therapy, traditional therapy, doesn't bring that somatic safety that the tapping does. Because if you think about the tapping, it's sending signals through the body that tell the brain that this feeling is safe and you don't have to hold it anymore. So that it literally starts to break down and dissolve. And that's the bit I think that's missing to the traditional therapy. So, say, for example, in a one-to-one, we're having a chat about why they're here. I feel so stuck in my life. And I've trained in all, this is what I get a lot now. I trained in all these modalities, and I'm afraid to share it with the world. Because I'm afraid of being seen. I'm afraid of rejection. Don't think they're good enough. You know, all these narratives
Mhm.
play out. And so we tune into that feeling. And so that they say that like a sadness inside, that they've done all this work, but they still can't step out and support others the way they want to. So we start tapping on the side of the hand. So this is underneath the baby finger,
Okay.
tapping on the side of the hand here. Yeah. And you say, even though I feel all this,
Hey, just to jump, so you're literally just tapping here on the side of the hand, and
tapping
the
on the
hand,
side of the
just gently tapping it. And what what's going on when I tap that?
we're sending electromagnetic pulses into the nervous system, and
Okay.
already it's like a unsafe signal.
Oh,
Think about it like that. Okay. So what we're doing is we're trying to, like on a wall with a light, we're trying to
yeah.
switch off the light. We're trying to switch off the stress response, which is your fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. Okay. So the the unsafe signal eventually will flip the switch, and then the cortisol and the adrenaline stop producing. That's how we get back to neutral.
Okay.
And once the cortisol and adrenaline drop, you start to feel calmer. You can get more clarity. You can make better decisions. You can start to believe in yourself more, etc. Okay, so we do start on the side of the hand, and this is called a setup statement. And this, you would say, even though I feel the sadness in my heart, I choose to forgive, love, and accept myself anyway. So this is an important statement, because you're kind of trying to bypass around the ego a little bit, because the ego wants us to keep us where we are. The ego does not want to let go. And what we're saying here is, even though I'm feeling this uncomfortable sensation or this emotion or this pain, we can be used for physical pain, I choose to forgive, love, and accept myself anyway. So it's kind of saying to your ego, my emotions are different to who I am. And it's okay to have this emotion because I know I'm okay in who I am. That's kind of a bit of a
So you're just experiencing the emotion, and you're letting the emotion do its thing, and to process. When you mentioned the ego there, I'm thinking that well, two things cross my mind. I work a lot with CEOs and entrepreneurs, and even I'm always looking for the emotion. I'm always looking for even in those sessions, I'm always looking for someone to get say something that they're not aware of, but that revealing an emotion or hurt, a belief or whatever. Because if I stop the conversation there and reflect back what they've said, they often realize something about themselves. But if we brush over the emotion and hold on to the story, then nothing is achieved. But there can be a powerful shift if someone recognizes that. But the fundamental thing I find with the ego is that the ego wants to be right. And so
Yeah.
I had a big row with Sarah. She hurt me, and I'm in this story, and I'm not, and I feel hurt, but I'm in the story, and part of me doesn't want to let that go because I want to be right about the fact that Sarah hurt me. And I've seen people
Absolutely.
Sarah go, "Are you willing to Are you? How long are you willing to suffer because your perception is
That's it.
going to hurt you? How long are you? How
That's
long are
it.
you willing to carry it? You know."
Yeah, that's the sabotage.
Hmm.
That's the sabotage of you know, the way the ego works is that it takes over and it thinks that it runs the show. And actually, I like to think of it as it should work in conjunction with the heart towards the same goal. And often they're operating from very, very different goals, different perspectives. So the sooner you can get the ego on board with feeling safe to change, and that the old stories that it's running are not working anymore, and that how about we work together on some new stories, that seems to be what helps to get the ego on side. And now obviously a little bit more tapping and talking in on that angle, on that vein, especially for someone who's very, very locked down ego, um, can be the trick to really just unlock and allow the person to change. Because if the ego's in a I'm not changing, this is my life, there's no way we're moving here, then I suppose you could tap for hours and nothing would change because the ego's locked down. But I've never had that. I've never not been able to bypass the ego with somebody. There's always a way, there's always a route. And it starts with safety, right? Because why is he locked down or she locked down in the first place? It's because it doesn't feel safe. So if you bring the tapping, the more you tap and talk to and understand, the ego is not the enemy. The ego is the result of your traumatized inner child. It's been built on a foundation of misperception and suffering and pain. And when you can see it like that, you bring compassion, forgiveness. It's so much easier to move forward.
I think that all parts of our being, maybe all parts of our personality, whether that be the mind, the ego, they're all ultimately there to serve us and support us. But some way along the journey, we allowed them dominate, and we decided that the feeling, that the emotion was less valid, and we should keep that under control, and we should lead into mind and ego. So I sense it's not about going, well, you shouldn't, you don't need mind, you don't need ego. You do. You just need a balance whereby
Yeah,
you're creating a space to look at emotions unaddressed. And as you were speaking, the question that was coming to mind was, do you experience that there are layers? So I come to you because of I don't know, stress in my business or relationship or whatever, and I come to you because that is the issue I want to address. Do we now address that, and does something else emerge? Is there a natural process of healing? Is it, I suppose, is it a healing journey?
absolutely. Yes, great question. Um, Someone comes for a stress in work environments. We tune into that stress and that feeling. And very quickly, I will be looking for earlier examples of that same feeling, right? Maybe not the same situation, but the same feeling. So I'll be saying, okay, well, was there any earlier time in your life that you felt this level of pressure? Say it's like pressure to perform. Okay, yeah, I did feel that pressure when I was doing my master's. Okay, great. And was there any earlier time that you felt that pressure? Oh, I felt that pressure when I was doing my leaving cert. Okay, great. Now let's keep going. Anything earlier, anything earlier. And this is when it gets really interesting. Could be the first day of school, could be schoolyard bully situation, it could be exam situation, it could be the teacher saying you're stupid situation, um, or it could be your birth situation, the pressure of birth, right? So the constriction or the pressure of the medical team or whatever it is. And when you create the safety, because you're tapping from the off, as soon as you have an emotion, you're kind of tapping and talking and co-creating this journey together, the brain surfaces the right memories based on the questions that we ask. So it's like going on a journey of discovery. What was the first stage that you felt this way? Or can you remember an earlier time? Or if you were to skip a moment in your life because it was so painful, which one would it be? So there's ways of like
So
guiding.
you're asking these questions, and the brain is responding, is giving out the information based on the questions you're specifically asking.
Yes, yes. Now, a lot of people will say, but I have loads of memories I can't access, or I have tried, I've never been able to get them, right? So I'll give you an example. I've recently trained a man to be an EFT practitioner. He was in a car crash at 6 years old, and he's only ever had two memories of that event. In the training, he decided to pursue, because it was really coming up for him, he wanted to pursue that event in our very safe environment with me and the inner practitioner. Within 20 minutes, his brain gave him the missing memories. It surfaced in order, all of the missing memories, and he was able to see for the first time the full picture, the full perspective, the outcome. We were able to help his 6-year-old release the fear because he was stuck in a memory that was unresolved. He didn't know what had happened on the other side of that memory. And as soon as we were able to open the door, the safety was brought into the body. His brain surfaced the whole picture, and he has had the biggest shift in his life as a result because he was basing most of his belief system on that experience, of which he only had two memories.
And is it that his brain was protecting him? Did his brain assume that he wasn't able to process that information, so it locked it away? And when via the tapping you created an environment where his nervous system felt safe and ready, then the brain said, "Okay,
Hope
you
we're ready
can
now.
now cope with this." I imagine he must have felt enormous relief.
Yes, and it was very painful emotion that moved through him, but it was short. So for the pain, that's the key, right?
That's the
He
thing.
really felt it and he released, and there was big, big emotions, big feelings, big letting go. And then all of a sudden, it was gone. It was like there was nothing there. like going from an intensity of 10 to an intensity of 0 or 1 within a few minutes. And that is the beauty. So often we can maybe connect emotionally, with therapy, but we're not getting that shift, certainly not at this kind of speed. This is extremely quick. And this guy is very tuned into himself. He's trained in multiple modalities. So, but even then, and he's been to therapy, none of those previous modalities had enabled him to connect the way he did with the tapping in 20 minutes. It was a 20-minute swap session, so that it wasn't like a full hour and a half session or anything. And so you're right. His brain and his body moved into coherence, and the environment felt safe enough for him for his mind to unlock those memories and the emotion that came with it.
I think when we talk about belief systems, maybe, firstly, it's very difficult to recognize your own belief system. So we consider and have a conversation about people's limiting beliefs, hugely unaware of our own limiting beliefs. So it is very difficult for people to recognize their limiting beliefs. But I see limiting beliefs. Beliefs are what lead to choices, and the choices we make every day have an impact on how our life is working out. And so I kind of say to people, well, you just look at the results in your life, and if you're getting a 9 out of 10, you're very happy in all your life and everything's very good, then you probably don't need to be worrying about any limiting beliefs, because well, we all want to grow. But if you've somewhere in your life, if you've someone in your life where it's not working well, and I mean, you alluded to this earlier. If there's a pattern there, we all have times in our life where we struggle. That's human nature. But if you're always struggling in relationships or in career or in your health or your mental, if there's somewhere where I think you're repeatedly struggling, then it seems to me like you need to explore what's going on specifically with that. But also, when you're talking about this gentleman, I thinking there are lots of modalities, and my personal belief is, we can have a love for particular modalities, but often there are lots of different things that work. And I think it's useful to be aware of lots of them and try them, because see, you can try therapy, which is very successful for some people, and then you go, but it's not working for me because your body needed something different. And I suppose that's where something like the tapping comes into it. There seems like that to get started on this, you would need to sit with a practitioner, I suppose, maybe to deal with some of your deeper emotions and to begin to learn how. But it also sounds like it's almost like a first aid kit that you carry around with you then, that you could, and I think I came across one of your shorts or tips recently where you spoke about driving back for something in the car. I don't know, was dropping one of your kids to school or something, tapping all the way home.
So,
Hey, but it's better than reaching for a cigarette.
oh, well, that's it. Yeah. It is both the Band-Aid that can keep you breathing from day to day and not going for the cigarette or the alcohol. And equally the thing that has the biggest transformation in your life. And for those deeper things, I would absolutely recommend working with somebody one-to-one, because there's, you need to feel safe in order to surface these things. And I think a practitioner can bring you that. And also, if a memory comes up that when you're working by yourself that has been repressed, this has happened before. I've heard stories that say like abuse. You're tapping away, all of a sudden, a repressed memory of abuse comes up. What do you do? That is a very real situation. And if that ever happens to anybody, I would just recommend open your eyes, take yourself out of the memory, really come into the room, focus on all your senses, touch your body, remind yourself that you're here now in this moment and not back in that memory, and tell your body, I'm safe. You can tap, I'm safe, I'm safe, I'm safe, all the different points. And then I would, get yourself to a calm, safe place, find somebody that you can receive comfort or connection from, whether it's a phone call or a face-to-face or a hug. And then I would reach out to me or another EFT practitioner, because there's a great it's brilliant. When memories surface, it's brilliant. Me, I'm like, yes, yes, yes. Because as a practitioner, I need memories to work with, because memories store the key. Memories are the key to unlocking what are the beliefs, what's the common thread. So we start most of the time, like you said earlier, people don't know what beliefs they're running, but we know how we feel, or we know we have a pattern of smoking, or a pattern of relationships ending badly, or a self-harm situation, or whatever it is, right? So we can start with any of those things. And then we work towards finding memory that are common, the common thread. And then when we have memories that are connected by the feeling or the behavior or the pattern, we can then ask questions like, now, what is the common theme between all of these memories? Can you see a little connection? What are we looking at here? What do you think is the belief that's underpinning these multiple memories that have had the same outcome? And so on. And then we can start to go deeper into what it actually is. And the more specific you are, the better. So, I'm not good enough. It's too vague. It's too general. And it's a great place to start. But really, we want to get to, oh, my teacher told me I was stupid. So I'm stupid is actually the real belief, or it's part of, and you can call them like belief bombs. Often we have an event that will actually create multiple different negative beliefs. And I just want to say too that those beliefs were created as safety strategy that served a purpose for probably a significant period of time.
Yep.
But over time, they become less effective. And that's when we start to call them limiting, because they're actually hindering us in the visibility that we want, or hindering us in the abundance that we wish to make, or hindering us in the leaps that we want to make in our careers, or feeling like imposter and so on. So the beliefs, there's nothing wrong with the belief really themselves. It's the fact that we don't upgrade them as we move through life, because we're not thought to be aware of all of this stuff. In teenage years, in our early 20s, no one's telling us, no one told us, the beliefs you had as a kid, probably needs a little bit of an upgrade so that you could really excel and really show up, or really be consistent in life. So I think that's what it is.
That's interesting. As you're talking there, I'm thinking you've revealed a belief system and a story that you have, because you said when memories come up, you go, oh, there you go. Now there's an opportunity for me to deal with it. So you've obviously shifted at some point in your life that when something comes up, if it's challenging you or whatever, instead of going, oh, let's lock that away and not address that, you're going, gotcha.
I'm going, this is actually great.
Yeah.
Even last night I was triggered by a friend not sending me a message that I wanted them to send me. And I was like, oh, why did I feel like that? And then I said, oh, because I think they don't care. And why don't I think they don't care? Or what's wrong? When did I not receive care? And then it brought me right back. And so once you become aware, you can start to notice the emotions that surface, question, okay, what behind that? It's not the action of the person, it's the void in me that has been triggered by that action. And then follow that detective. I totally believe I'm a detective, and I'm co-creating a healing pathway or a journey with somebody. They're doing the healing work. I'm just asking questions, guiding, bringing safety, bringing a new perspective.
As we draw this to conclusion, for someone who's listening to this or watching this, what might they be experiencing that would lead you to say you might be benefit by working with someone for tapping? What can they go, okay, I suppose what I'm asking is, what are the signs that maybe this could be of benefit to me, that maybe
Yeah.
I'm a good candidate.
Yeah. Yeah. So, feeling stuck, feeling just frozen in time with no clear vision, direction, lack of confidence in self. Um, that would be kind of like a current feeling. If there's anybody with any chronic pain or illness, I personally believe that are all roots in emotion, and that deeply rooted emotions, that emotion that's been around a long time. So I would advise looking at that, as well as obviously the other um, GP and other routes that are taken. But I think emotional support is really important for people that are ill. Um, if you've had big trauma. So, my pathway to tapping was the loss of our daughter straight after birth. And that propelled me into needing something very quick that was going to be very effective, because I was pregnant again and needed to go through another labor. Um, and I had about 6 month window of which to prepare myself for. So that was how I found tapping. Um, So big trauma like car crashes, the loss particularly early loss of mum or dad, um, any complex childhood trauma, if you were premature, if you had a difficult birth, if mum was separated from birth, if you're bullied. Bullying is massive. People do
Yeah.
not give themselves enough credit for the impact that bullying has had on them. Um, yeah, I mean, there's so many things
Yeah.
that it can really help with, but I hope that helps a little bit.
Yes, it really, really does, and it's clear that you had a very difficult experience yourself. So um, you're walking the talk. You've had a very difficult experience. But as you were talking that, what I was thinking is that if you, while you were then pregnant on your second child, if you hadn't um done the healing necessary, then you would have carried that onto the children that came as a, and the difference between a mother who is in a healing situation as opposed to a mother who's still traumatized from a very
100%.
yes, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm guessing, know nothing about you as a parent, but I imagine that allows you to show up very differently as a mother. So by healing yourself, you're giving an enormous gift to yourself, but the gift you're giving to your children, your partner, everyone else is enormous in just by taking a bit of self-care first.
It it was a conscious decision to not live the rest of my life in absolute devastating grief and pain and suffering. I was 33. I was like, my life is not over. I cannot have my
You
life
cannot
be
stop
over
here.
now. And I took responsibility for my healing journey from that point on. And I had not done any work on myself prior to this. So just so you know, this was like the jolt out of the blue that propelled me into the path I should have taken, the path I was always going to take. I'm here now talking to you. I've written a book, I've written oracle cards, I've run memberships, I've spoken on stages. Um, I've been on TV with it. None of that would have happened if I hadn't decided that I wasn't going to live from that place and that I was going to help myself. And actually, what I wanted to do was help others almost as a way of helping myself. That was really part of my motivation from the beginning, was that I want to prove to people that you can live after grief. I want to prove people you can love and laugh and find joy after this devastating loss.
Well, very well done and very courageous. But I was on a retreat last week in Clare, and one of the things that came out, about a dozen people in the room, was that the greatest gift we can give to the world is to bring the lessons we have learned to others, to have experienced something difficult, which, by the way, not everyone has gone through what you've gone through, but every human being has gone through something difficult. And if you manage to learn, grow, and heal from that, to take that to someone else in your situation, in your case to mum's situation, is almost like the most beautiful gift you can give to the world. And it to some degree it makes sense of it all, but it really seems to me one of the most wonderful things you can do. So well done and thank you. I know you're very active on social media, so hopefully we have a lot of people now going, I need to learn more about this. Where would you point them? Where can they find you?
I'm in two places now, so you can look up Sarah_Tobin, and I'm creating a new business called Wowwise, and so you can find me there at my_Wowwise, and this is going to be a global movement of personalized healing. Eventually, and I've just launched a membership today, actually. So very, very excited about it.
Well, congratulations and thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Sarah Tobin, it's been an education and an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been lovely.